Thanks so much for coming on. Where are you zooming in from today?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix. Awesome. How far is that from Scottsdale? That's where they play my favorite golf tournament.
Yeah, I don't know. What are we? About 5 miles from Scottsdale? 10 or 15 minutes in the car, yeah. Yeah, I moved out here in 87 straight after. I graduated May 11 and opened up September 21, 87 right in Phoenix. And been here ever since. So that's, gosh darn, that's 34 years.
Wow. Great weather, though, I bet.
Well, half the year it's over 100 degrees every day for half the year. But when you're old like me, I mean, I'm 58. I'd rather be too hot than freezing. I mean, yeah, you get older, the circulation. I'd rather be way too hot and strip down to shorts and a t-shirt than thinking if I get locked out of my car, I'm dead.
Well, it's sure better than what we have here right now in Toronto. It's gloomy and gloomy and not even 10 degrees. So I would take the heat any day.
Yeah. Canada, man. I love Canada. 90% of their population lives within 100 miles of the border.
Yeah. And they're proud of it before COVID, when we could go down and shop and then do all the fun stuff.
I always picture Canada as, you're living in dental school with 5 insane people, and there's a loft upstairs with the Canadian looking down at us, just always shaking his head, thinking, "What the hell's wrong with those people?"
It's funny though, because with this COVID vaccine rollout, we're actually looking up to you guys right now. We're struggling up here.
Well, it's just the fact that, scales of economy, 30 million people had so much less purchasing power than 320 million people. It's just a game of numbers. And
yeah, it was pretty ironic, because I was in a public health course, and the Canada and the US are always head to head when it comes to what percent is publicly funded, privately funded. We have universal health coverage, you guys don't, and then all of a sudden someone asks, well, what about the vaccine rollout? And it's like, well, they're doing so much better than us, and we're up here struggling and can't get people. Doctors right now don't even have shots, some of them. So it's brutal up here.
But I'd like to talk about all those things, because I think it's like what you talked about, the healthcare and the difference in the United States, and it leads to a great debate. But as long as everybody in the world realizes that, I in my mind, in my walnut brain, I always think, okay, the pyramids were pretty much the first existence that, we're now not sitting in a tree all day. And that was 5,000 years ago. Pythagoras' theorem was 2,500 years ago. And we're right now, I think it'll be, I think at best we're at the halftime. I think it'll be 5,000 years before we totally know, everything. And so the final business model is not been figured out yet with DSOs. Look at law firms. They're 2 decades ahead of us, and lawyers settled out to where half of them are in group and half of them are solo. And for all the same reasons. And I really think that's where the dental industry is going to go. And as far as socialized medicine, I read a great book on it where, after World War II, 1945, all these destroyed countries thought, well, we're not going to rebuild a civilization if everybody's sick and uneducated. Let's do socialized medicine or government-sponsored medicine and education. And if we can get everybody healthy and smart, we got a better shot. But when you look at how those 20 countries, the devil's in the details, how they all did it slightly different, man, I think the best scenario is actually Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, who just started 10 years ago. And they got to look at how Canada to England to Australia and all those countries did it for half a century. And they picked it all apart. And they got the best system. In fact, in America, their outcomes, America is about $17,000 a year per person. They're $1,700. And the only place you will find their outcomes for $1,700 in the United States are Mayo Clinic, Hopkins, Sloan Kettering, Houston Clinic. Just the best of the best. But it's just amazing how trying to get people to realize that something's wrong with their own tribe is so difficult. It's like my mother, we had a long running joke. My 2 older sisters went straight to the nunnery after high school, right? And my mom was just like the staunchest Catholic you ever met in your life. And whenever she'd introduce anyone, she'd always tell you their name and then the religion. She'd say like, well, this is Sally. She's a Lutheran. And I'm just like, why do you always? So I made a joke for each one. Like when she'd say Lutheran, I go, weren't those the first Catholics that could read? And, just something with all of those. And if everybody can just get, humble and realize that we haven't figured it all out, every tribe's got trade-offs, pros and cons. But I think the Canadian system could be enhanced to another scale. And just in the co-payments, the only dig I really have with the Canadians is out there always bragging like, well, my mom had a triple bypass and it didn't even cost her $1. And it's like, well, we're in 1736, Adam Smith writes The Wealth of Nations, and we got 200 years of economic theory. The University of Chicago's got the most Nobel Prize winning. So you're just saying to take all that data and just throw it away and say, incentives don't matter, that someone in Toronto might be looking, well, if this hip is 50,000 and my co-payment's 10%, 5,000, well, I'm going to go over to Edmonton. And I hear it's only 40,000 over there, So, and then fraud. No one's looking at the bill. No one's saying, hey, he didn't do 2 knees on me. He did 1 knee on me. But they're not looking at the bill because, I had a knee replacement and they only charged me $1 for a Netflix movie. Okay, so you didn't look at the bill. They charged you for 2 knees instead of 1. So I think we're in exciting times. 2007 to me was when the planet landed on the moon. Neil Armstrong landed on the moon when I was 7 in '69, and he had a smaller computer that now billions of people have. And when Jobs took the touch screen and the phone and your music selection and the internet and crammed that all into an iPhone, now every sapien has what Neil Armstrong had on the moon, and I think it's going to be our finest century. But I think what they're going to find out in that fine century is not so much all the new stuff. It's just saying, what have we already learned? Right now, the only lesson that history has taught us is that humans never learn from history. And now I think this next centuries are going to, started with math and physics and chemistry and biology, saying, okay, well, this is obvious. So let's just delete everything that throws this away and just build solid roots, solid trunk, solid branches, and on that way to figuring everything out. But I think it's really exciting times. And that social media stuff where everybody's always complaining about what someone said on social media and they're taking down accounts. The first 108 billion people that live, we've only been on this planet 200,000 years. And we lived through 2 ice ages, but the first 108 billion people, we don't even know their name, let alone what they thought. And is that what you want? You want to ban everyone from social media so, we can go back to Australopithecus and not even know one thought he had? Who knows what he thought when he looked up at the sun? So I think these are exciting times. And as a dentist, before I work on a person, I want a complete exam. I want a full set of x-rays and all that stuff. And I love the fact that social media is giving you a full set of x-rays on how batshit crazy wild ass Homo sapiens are. Yeah. And then we'll have a start,
Sure.
That's what, it's the map, it's the compass. So I love these times.
Yeah.
And congratulations to your show. I can't believe you're a freshman in dental school and you're already doing this. Holy moly.
I appreciate that. It's taken up a good amount of time, but I'm nowhere close to you. You have something like 1,500 episodes out, which is just impressive.
Yeah, but I'm almost dead. You haven't even got out of school yet. You still got circulation in your coronary arteries. But the thing that you're doing that impresses me the most, and why I can always spot success, is if you think the answers to the universe are knowing the difference between a sine, a cosine, and a tangent, you're really confused. And if you get all these A's in that and everybody says you're the smartest geometrist and you make Pythagoras so proud, you don't get it. It's all the people stuff. And by networking and building all these relationships, you don't even know 10, 20, 30 years from now, some of these guys you podcasted, they saw you coming up the stairs, and 30 years later, they're going down the stairs. And it's just the power of networking. If you can always get into the mode that you're running from, like dentists. Almost every dentist I've ever went to lunch with, if I said, well, God, that waitress, you didn't even offer your card. She found out we were dentists. She's talking about dentistry. Your office is across the street. She commutes to work. Give her your card. Oh, I don't have a card. I got cards on me. I got them in my car. It says that if you come in, you're get a new patient $20 Visa card or whatever. And then if you refer someone in, write it down. And that when he comes in, he'll get a $20 Visa card, and so will you. But I mean, if you're just always running for mayor, if you're always networking, you'll become the mayor of Dentaltown someday. I mean, just it's all networking.
Yeah, I think I learned that when I was a consultant, and that in the business world, everything's about who you know, not so much what you know. And then that coming from a science background and a core physiology background, where who you knew didn't really matter. You just kind of put your head down, did your research, did your grades, got everything, crossed all the T's, dot all the I's, and seeing that contrast, I really do think now that I've kind of opened my eyes and seen the world. It's so important, and it's so downplayed.
Yeah, the PhDs in math, physics, chemistry, biology, medicine, dentistry, that doesn't matter. But man, if you're in law school, like people say, should I really try to go to Harvard? Yeah, if you're a lawyer or you want to get an MBA and go work at KPMG like you're doing. But yeah, if it's absolutely science, no one cares what your pedigree is. It's like 1 + 1 = 2, or it doesn't, regardless of where you're from. And but yeah, networking is really big in law and business.
Yeah.
So tell me about your journey with KPMG. How does a freshman in dental school already have experienced healthcare management consulting at KPMG Canada?
So I came actually out of my undergrad not knowing what I wanted to do. I was juggling between, do I go into medicine? Do I go into business? Do I go into dentistry? And I saw this opportunity to be a healthcare management consultant and kind of see the industry at a 30,000-foot view and see the industry trends and meet the people that were actually, in the trenches, and also meeting people that are higher up and making the decisions, and kind of seeing everything from a very big picture perspective. So I really just applied, explained my interest that, I was very upfront and honest about not really knowing where I wanted to go. I said I initially wanted to go into surgery. I initially wanted to go into medicine, but based on some of my shadowing and some of my experiences, I didn't really think that that's how my life wanted to pan out, or that's not really how I saw myself or how I saw my career going. So I joined the firm, got some really cool experience, worked to kind of operationalize some universal health coverage in some countries, help some other folks in the public sector operationalize some of their projects. So it was a good experience.
And I want to talk about taxes, because when I think of KPMG, I mean they do a lot of tax strategy, financial management. And in fact, that's why I love Warren Buffett so much. I went to Creighton in Omaha, and him and Charlie Munger were born there. And my business teacher for Business 101 was like 1,000,000 years old. And he had Warren come over and lecture to our class. And I just love the fact that he just calls it like it is. Like when you start talking in dentistry and someone talks about EBITDA, I mean, Warren Buffett even says it right on the deal that if you take all the people who talk and mention EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization, he says those are where all the crooks are. And if you listen to all the people that never mention EBITDA, they're almost all non-crooks. And because earnings before interest, well, what? We're going to throw away interest? I mean, socialized medicine wants to get rid of incentives and co-payments, so now we're going to get rid of interest. Taxes? Really? Is there a society out there with no taxes? Depreciation? That's the bullshit tax code that's 60,000 pages long. So you're talking, that'd be like saying, well, yeah, the profit at my dental office, the earnings before payroll and taxes and supplies and lab bills, and everybody be saying, well, aren't those really cost?
Right.
I mean, EBITDA is just a sign that you're a crook, in my opinion. And I can say that because Warren is 90 and Charlie Munger's like 94. And they've been saying this since I can even remember. But I just want to say one thing about taxes, because I know you guys have a higher tax rate, and a lot of Americans believe they have a lower tax rate, and they just don't. If you look at the tax rate, and by the way, and AOC's out there telling everybody that, the millionaires and billionaires should pay 60, 70%. But what she'll never tell you is what does the government take, and Americans, if you look at it's not just your federal income tax, your state income tax, it's your gasoline tax, your grocery tax. I mean, there's so many damn taxes, you can't count them all. And then if you add in how much their health care cost and their co-payments and all that, Americans are one of the highest taxed people in the world. But since they spread it out on 1,300 different taxes and people don't put in the health care, but what I think would be the best policy is to go to all these countries and first get what is the total take in tax revenue from the economy. And whatever that number is, that would have to be the highest tax rate, because when you let an individual retain a lot of his profit, they'll hire a bunch of employees and make a damn iPhone or launch Amazon or do all these services. Whereas the government, last time I called 911, she was asking me for a description of the car. And I'm like, I can FaceTime my 83-year-old mother. Why can't you FaceTime me and I just show you the car? Because that's government. They're always a decade late and spent twice as much money. Look at NASA. I mean, that was just amazing. Elon Musk is really mining all the facilities of NASA, where they would, their whole history, it's like the launch was like, the total cost of the satellite was like maybe 300 million. But all the people planning and all that stuff was like 10 billion. It's like 10 billion. You spent 30 times more money managing the satellite than the whole cost of the project. So so government, it's easy to say that government does everything for twice the price with half the services, and they could learn a lot from business. And business has got to quit lying to themselves. But this deal that Canadians and Denmark and Sweden and Switzerland, their tax rate is so high. It's like, dude, you're not even comparing apples to apples. Do the math or shut the hell up.
Yeah, there's so many things that the private sector does better than the public. I wonder, do you think that there are any domains that should remain in the public sector that should be completely exclusive from any private interests?
Ask me that again. I'm not sure I get what you're saying.
So, for example, SpaceX relative to NASA. SpaceX has been able to launch rockets, make reusable rockets, do it at a much lower cost through this ability to privatize and through this ability to have private interests. Do you think that there are certain domains, perhaps the Postal Service, some would argue healthcare, maybe medicine, that should exclusively remain in the public sector?
That's a great question, but Elon Musk reminds me a lot of Steve Jobs, which is Steve Jobs stole pretty much everything that what was it, Xerox was studying, and they invented the graphical user interface, the mouse, all this stuff. Jobs steals all this shit, and then he walks out there like it's him. I mean, he would go out there and do his presentation, never mention his top scientists, and they were begging, this guy worked 100 hours a week for a decade. Can you just call out his name? No, it was all about Elon Musk when he talks about all that stuff like reusable rockets. I mean, have you ever heard of the Space Shuttle Challenger? All these things have been going on since about the end of World War II, 1945. And I love it when Americans always say they went to the moon because, with German scientists, it's kind of like when Boston won the Stanley Cup with not one single player that was born in America. It was all German scientists. And I think Elon Musk is effectively mining all the technology that they've come up with, but they're too incompetent to manage. And I always think the best partnerships are government-private partnerships. And the thing the government does best is collect taxes because they have the mob, right? You'll go, they'll kidnap you and you'll go sit in a cage if you don't pay the shakedown, and distributing it. But they're horrible at managing anything. So, I think the government, and a lot of people who don't believe in certain things, like they'll say, I don't believe in socialized medicine. Okay, well, if a kid starts walking across the interstate, everybody stops and calls the police. So they all just said, if you're walking into 7-Eleven to buy a beer and there's some kid out there that says, if I don't collect $10, I'll die of cancer. I mean, so humans say a lot of stuff, and that's their words, but you never look at their words. You always look at their action. And if you want to look at redistribution of wealth, go to every family I've ever met. It's like the really smart kid, they didn't even help them pay for college or anything. But the really dumb kid, they bought him. He's now in his third car, and no matter what he does, I mean, I look at the family redistribution of wealth by some of the most conservative millionaire dentists, and I'm like, dude, what did you do for your daughter? That's the most socialistic redistribution of wealth I've ever seen an entitled, kid get. So humans they're very, very complex, and they're always multivariable. You can never address a human as up, down, left, right, forward, back. It's always 5, 10, 20 variables. And with all this information, I mean, when I was born in 62, and in 72 when I was 10, my mom bought our first set of encyclopedias at a garage sale that was printed in 52. And those 27 books was the whole universe. And me and my 5 sisters, we laid there on the floor for a month reading those things and just thought, okay. Now anybody can go to Wikipedia, and it's 75 million pages, all updated today. I mean, so information is a commodity, and now it's just up to building applications, finding the people, time, and money to create an application that harnesses everything we've learned in the last 5,000 years. And that's why this is going to be really exciting times. I just can't even believe what this messenger RNA technology is going to do for this vaccine. I mean, my gosh, I'm hearing people say, really smart pathologists and virologists saying, well, you could do this with your top 10 cancers. And you could do it as fast as you did with COVID. And I'm like, what? Well, if that's even remotely true, I mean, could you imagine these are the times when they just start knocking out major cancers with some messenger RNA? I mean, so these are totally exciting times.
So I think if one thing hasn't been blatantly obvious as of yet is to the listeners, at least, is you are so much more than a dentist, right? You have all these various opinions, and you have all these various these domains of expertise that you've developed over not only your 1,500 podcasts, but through Dentaltown and through your private practice. And you have a pretty unusual string of letters following your name. It's DDS MBA. So why did you go actually pursue your MBA?
Well, money is the answer. What's the question? I mean, when you look at economics, it's really think about the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency. I mean, it's not really. No one looks at it as a reserve currency. It's an equal sign. I mean, I'm going to give you 5 chickens for your pig, and the dollar is just the conversion. It's just the equal sign. And my gosh, so that gives us the most data, because you don't know why Sally wanted to sell her 5 chickens. You don't know why she's so excited about eating some pig, but you definitely have the data of this is a transaction. She gave a coin. She gave a gold coin in exchange. So just an immense amount of data. And one of the problems with healthcare, and I learned very quickly, is you can't get doctors to even look at the data and talk about it like it's real. And the best example is a composite. They want to believe the tooth-colored composite that they put on a rubber dam and they bought a $500 bonding kit. They just know it's better and lasts longer. But when you look at the data, it's like, I'm pretty sure the metal one lasts longer than the plastic one. I mean, if I found a homeless person behind a dumpster and said at KFC, what do you think lasts longer, the tooth-colored plastic fork or this metal fork I got from my own kitchen drawer? He'd look at you like, is this a joke? I mean, obviously the metal. And then they fell from biology, and the metal one is half mercury. That's pretty toxic. The other half silver diamine fluoride, zinc, tin, stannous fluoride. I mean, the whole metal amalgam is toxic to recurrent decay, and it's metal, and it lasts like 38 years compared to a 6-year composite. But the worst studies I can find on amalgams that they last 12 years, which is still twice as long as a composite. And then I say, nope, not in my hands. I have special hands. I have special hands. And it's like, you don't have special hands. You just don't want to believe the obvious data. And the same thing with the treatment plan. I mean, look at the treatment plan. I mean, this was before you were born, but let me find the deal. But there was a magazine in the United States called Reader's Digest, and it was, everybody's grandma had it. Let me see if I can find it. I don't even know where it is. But anyway, I think it's right here. Yeah, here it is. And my gosh, it was 1997. Were you even born in 97?
That was my birth year.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! You just ruined my entire day. So February 1990, the Reader's Digest, with a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist William Eckenberg, who was infamous for his coverage on 3 Mile Island and that meltdown, and all that, writes a cover story how dentists rip us off, and basically what it was. It was true. He took study models and FMX and he went to 30 different dentists. And guess what? He got 30 different treatment plans. So then the government heard about this. So the National Institute of Dental Research said, we know William Eckenberg is a legit guy, but I think we need to redo this. And we're going to do it at 100 because that's how math works. I still don't know why there's 360 degrees in a circle on a base 60. What are these people, drunk? I mean, can we have math reform, geometry reform? So they do 100. And they take study models, FMX, Pano, to 100 dentists, and only 2 treatment plans were the same, and those were the 2 guys who said nothing, do nothing. And then treatment plan 3 to 100 went from like $100 all the way to $30,000. So, when I look, if you look at me, if I looked at you and said, you should really bleach your teeth, you're probably looking at me saying, yeah, you should probably lose 50 pounds. And I was like, I don't have any right to tell you need whiter, brighter teeth, but you have a lot of reasons to tell me why I should lose 50 pounds for, I'm committed to getting diabetes. But the bottom line is, that's why I never rolled out a DSO. I've had more than several opportunities, but I did a turnkey operation. I thought that was a lot better because you can do everything perfect on demographics, logistics, marketing, accounting, financing, everything. And then you get a dentist who just looks in your mouth and just treats the worst tooth. Well, what's the tooth that makes you not able to sleep? This one. Okay, we'll fix that one. It's like, dude, it's like they have 212 bones. What if they came into you and every bone was broken? Would you ask which one's broken the most? So you got the one-tooth denters, and then maybe after 10 years, about half of them might go to quadrant dentistry, but only like 5% will ever just get to full mouth. And they have all these reasons like, well, I can't numb up both sides. Okay, you're in the same building as an oral surgeon that numbs up all 4 quadrants and pulls them all 4 at the same time. And every time I let the patient talk me into it and say, well, we'll just pull the wisdom tooth on the right, and then you come back later and get the left. Well, after the right, they're not ever going to come back. That wasn't a real practice building moment when they lost a weekend on the couch. So dentistry is not black and white. The treatment planning is not it's not scientific. And then you got the insurance reimbursement, where when they do things like, we'll give you $6 for every perio chip you put in the gum disease pocket, and all the periodontists saying, well, don't do that. Well, they're giving you an incentive. So what are my homies going to do? They got to pay their rent, mortgage, equipment, bill, out computer, insurance. So they're always looking at, running up the tab. So it's crazy times. And I think the model of healthcare is where the government collects the premium, and then you take that premium and you go to the doctor. And look what's the most wrong with American healthcare, like the VA. Well, when I know several vets that I've sat on their porch with in a small town like in Beeville, and they're saying, well, I'm a vet, and so I have to drive 3.5 hours into Houston to go to a doctor, and there's 5 of them right here. It's like, why wouldn't the government just give him an insurance card and let him pick his own provider because of the attributes of closer, convenience, availability, all these things? But the government, if you really look through their eyes, it's always been a jobs program. All they care about is owning their employees, their own government buildings, their own, everything, instead of putting the customer first. And I always say you keep one eye on the customer and one eye on cost. And if you don't make everything faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost, and smaller, then you're just noise until someone with a full hand runs you over from behind.
Right.
So, so dentists usually, every idea I've heard, I say, well, is it better, faster, easier, higher quality, lower price? Well, it's so good that it'll cost twice as much, but it's worth it. It's that good. Okay, so you don't think Henry Ford is right that every working man should have a car, should only be the rich, kings and queens and billionaires. So we'll just have like everybody just making one car for $1 million for one rich guy instead of this shitty Model T. And that's the thing. Dentists always look at that Lamborghini and they say, well, a perfect crown is a Lamborghini. Okay, well, your patient barely has enough for a $30,000 new car. So can you give me a $30,000 new car? And they can't. They say, no, it's a Lamborghini or nothing. And then on top of that, all the money is made from the worst mortal sin of them all. I mean, America was built on two great sins, right? A bunch of people came over here, and the first thing they did is ran all the indigenous people off the land in very violent ways, and then they brought their African slaves. That's you know what the third worst sin was? It was about 1900 when the doctors didn't want all these people coming in from India and doing medicine and dentistry, so they set up a 50 state boards. And they became the judge, jury, and the executioner. You can't be a doctor unless you go to a school that we accredited. And in 1900, they closed down 90% of all the schools, took the license away from 90% of all the doctors, and said, you know, in America, when I grew up, the General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, those are the worst cars on the planet because they had tariffs blocking competition. And as soon as the government got rid of those, these little Volkswagen Beetles started coming in from Germany and these Datsun B210s from Japan. Americans thought, oh my God, these things last like 200,000 miles. They're all, and GM at that time had 50% of all car sales in the United States. And now I'm almost 60 and they're down to 30% because they suck. I mean, they absolutely make horrible cars. And we did that to medicine. I practiced across from the Guadalupe Indian Reservation, and there's 25,000 people there with no dentists. They're all from Mexico, Indians, natives, whatever. And every time I go to the Mexican border, if I go down to Yuma and cross into Molar City, there's all these amazing Mexican dentists there. And who are they working on? Americans who want it lower cost. And then when that Mexican says, well, God, I hear about Guadalupe and there's 20,000 people that don't have a dentist, I'm going to move there. Oh, the state board calls the mob and they send someone out to kidnap him and arrest him and put him in a cage and deport him. Because what was he doing? He's immigrating here with his free will, and the consumer is not allowed to make their own decision. The government got in bed with healthcare, and that's why the prices are out of control. So when anybody tells you, like Bernie Sanders and AOC, that they care about the poor, no, they don't. They care about their state boards and their governments and Medicaid and that big bureaucracy. If you wanted to treat all the poor, take India, for example, because that's an English-speaking country with 1,300,000,000 people. How many dentists in India would move here tomorrow if they could legally practice dentistry? They just wouldn't be accredited by the state board. They'd say, well, or is he accredited by the state board? No, he went to some school. But you have to be transparent. You have to say where you went. I mean, if you didn't go to dental school and you said you're a dentist, well, now you're a lying crook and you didn't need kidnapped and put in a cage. But if you just got rid of the boards, there wouldn't be any healthcare problem. In fact, before they did that, the cost of healthcare in the United States was 1%. By the end of 2000, a century after doing that, it had rose to 14%, and now it's 17%, all because the government, which always does this, they break your legs, and then they try to be the good guy giving you a wheelchair. It's like, dude, I wouldn't need a wheelchair if it wasn't for you, and I wouldn't need your help paying my medical bill. Look at George Bush. He found out Walmart, you sell a pill in the United States for $10. They sell it in China for $1. They do that in dentistry. All these bonding kits that I see are $500 a kit. And then you go to India, China, and Brazil, and they're $50. And so Walmart said, well, screw that. We're going to start buying our pharmaceuticals in Hong Kong and shipping them back in. So the pharmaceutical industry raised $6 million. And then George Bush passed a law that you couldn't re-import them. And since they're so expensive, we're going to have the prescription benefit program, which was a $1 trillion entitlement, unfunded. And that whole $1 trillion doesn't exist because the pill only costs $1 in China and only costs 5 cents to make. So why do you need $10 to afford this pill and need the government to help you? Because of the government. They're the most evil crooks ever. But they are getting slightly better. I mean, you go back to 2,000 years ago. I mean, to now, I'd say the government's at least 3 or 4% less corrupt and murderous and all that kind of stuff. But we got a long way to go. We got 5,000 years to go. And I think your generation is going to do it because you got all the data. It's just a matter of if you put in the hours, you can figure this out. And then when you go to the government official and you say, well, why are Americans driving down to Molar City on the south side of Yuma, Arizona, and that same dentist can't go to Guadalupe where there's no dentist, and you're talking about, well, why are there no dentists here? Oh, I don't know. In my lifetime, you've arrested like half a dozen of them, and you're really asking me why there's no dentist there? Are you that dumb, brainwashed, insane? I mean, it's just out of my mind how illogical. Because people, when it affects their own income, they'll believe anything.
Right.
And and you try to get yourself out of it. Quit. I don't want to hear your bias and all your baggage. Let's just objectively look at what's going on. And they're like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm a dentist in America. I make $174,000 a year on a 3-day weekend. Are you saying that's a bad idea? Yeah, it's a bad idea if you're one of the 20,000 people in Guadalupe who can't afford your $1,000 root canal.
Yeah, so some people look to the private sector to solve this problem, right? How can the private sector really and I mean, one answer to this could potentially be corporate dentistry. You build up enough of a base to a point where this, big brother, as you call it, government can't really push you around as they would be able to do if you were a, small independent dentist. So what is the solution to all this?
Well, first of all, let's make sure our definition is right, because when we talk about geometry, we talk about sine, cosine, tangent. When you talk politics, oh my God, every term means something in every country. It means something at different time periods. It gets all crazy. But what you call the government always starts with the militia killing people to take power, and it always ends with a new militia overtaking that one. So it always starts at the military and ends at a military. Then you get all confused of what you name this puppet from its birth to death. But if you look at all 208 countries, you look at all their borders, millions of people died for all those borders. So they're not a government, they're warriors. And you got your warriors and your lawyers. And, the warriors just got to quit killing. And the lawyers got to stop bribing the government officials. Every time, like if I gave you a bribe and said to pass this bill, you say, that's a bribe, I'll go to jail. But every dental society has a political action committee. They give these guys $35,000 to run. All the lawyers are bribing the process. And what your generation is to stuff is like, forget all the baggage from religion and business and politics and military. And let's just look at this very simple problem. Amy has a toothache and she can't sleep. She only speaks Spanish. Her parents were born in Mexico. There's a Mexican dentist that wants to set up here. So what's the problem? Oh, the government. When they found out that it was an unlicensed American dentist. I mean, we saw this in World War II. I mean, my gosh, when I got here, there was like this 85-year-old Jewish woman that had 4 offices, and they said, oh, you got to meet her. And I said, well, what, what's going on? She goes, well, I knew I had to get out of Germany. That was pretty damn obvious. And then when I came here, they wouldn't recognize my degree. And I can understand that, because she's from Germany, where they make Mercedes-Benz. I mean, this is America, the land of the Pinto. And, we couldn't trust her Mercedes-Benz dental degree when we make a Chevy and a Chrysler. And but what happened is she went and got a lawyer. They said, well, you can't practice dentistry, but I looked at this bill. You can own a dental office. So she was handcuffed behind her back, and now she has 4. By that time, she had 4 offices. And if she'd have been doing the dentistry herself, her eye-hand coordination, she probably would have retired at 65. But since she was just all in her mind, not having to work, on a patient, she was 80 years old, being catered around in a limo. I think her operation is probably running $10 million a year, netting $1 million. I mean, these are, so a lot of times, when life gives you lemons, you just make lemonade, and she adapted very well. But the problem is that everybody talks about taxes, and it's the regulations that kill you. It's the regulations that you can't come here from Mexico to a town in LA that's 98% of the zip code speaks Spanish, and they only have a dentist for every 6,000 people. And this guy can do the dentistry cheaper than the co-payments on the Medicare program for the overcost American dentist. So, and you always have a reason, and their lie always begins as, well, we're just doing it for you. We're trying to help you. Yeah, we're trying to help you. Yeah, notice the gun to your head, the knife to your neck, and all the systems broken by these guys. And that's what scares me the most about millennials. It really does. Because twice as many millennials think government is the savior, when any cursory review of 5,000 years for history, you couldn't get a more opposite wrong answer. You know what I mean?
Do you think people are putting too many of their eggs in the government's basket?
Well, the government, they just, like take HIPAA. That was started by Nancy Kasman, born in Wichita, Kansas, and all that stuff. So they spent all these years writing a bill, and that bill still hasn't even been modified for, decades. They do the same thing with those. In free enterprise, you come out with a bill and you say, hey, we're going to make these, and we're going to make them red. We're going to make them for $1, sell them for $2, and we sell $1 million. We'll make $1 million. And then nobody buys the red one. They all say, well, do you have blue? Well, with HIPAA, you still got the original red law that's been in there for 30 years. It's just not practical. In fact, the only way the lawyers could get practical, Charlie Munger has got me more excited than any 94-year-old man on earth. And what he's trying to do is he's saying, look, these laws, well, if it's really logical, shouldn't it all be programmable? And your laws, and they're taking all the laws around the world, sorting them to saying, well, why do all these laws exist? And when everything exists in every culture, most laws come from a scar. Someone was wronged and someone tried to right it. Well, just collect every one of those for the whole 8 billion herd going back in time as far as you can. And Charlie's convinced that until legal system, I'll give you an example. Let's say that you murdered your wife. Well, the government would sit there and say, well, we got evidence that we're going to go arrest you and put you in a cage. Well, I mean, slow down, Spanky. Let's get digital. Let's make it transparent. We're going to illuminate this guy. We're going to make him transparent, and we're going to put all the evidence online. So the neighbors, jury, your peers, the neighbors, the press, some kid in Indonesia might be interested in this case. And then when you get to all the conclusions that we can arrest you, in fact, we're going to try you for murder and try to have you killed. Well, then your brother comes over and he kills you. And he's like, well, how are you going to arrest your brother? That was your decision. We all came to that decision that we were going to arrest you, try you guilty, and give you the death penalty. And his brother just saved us, $5 million and did it for everyone. I mean, if you can automate this whole process, and again, the only two lessons from history is transparency versus opaque, and competition, checks and balances, as opposed to, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if we can just break up the government into a competitive enterprises and make everything transparent, like when Snowden released just a CD-ROM of stuff, the first thing everybody should have thought, like, holy shit, I need to see all of that. Put all of that shit on Wikipedia tomorrow. Instead, he's hiding from the mob who, when they find him, they're going to try to kill him. So that's a classic of transparency or opaque. It's the same thing with social media. Do you want the opaque of the first 108,000 people living? We don't know a damn thing they thought. Or would you rather have the transparency? So you're not going to shake me from transparency is better than opaque and competition is better than absolute power. And the government just writing these rules that everybody has to follow for several decades at a time. Nothing's fluid. Nothing keeps getting, minor changes like an OSHA or HIPAA or anything like that.
Right. You talk a lot about, social media and it's a good segue to Farhan Media, which is your media company. You're the president and CEO of that. And you founded with over 250 registered members at this point. And you also expanded to Orthotown and Hygiene Town. What was the genesis story of Farhan Media and Dentaltown in particular?
I would say it was, you come out of dental school with like 200 of your most favorite alcoholics on earth, and it was just 4 years. I mean, I lived in a house with 5 dental students. I mean, it couldn't have been more fun. And now you're all alone. And you do an x-ray, and you're wondering, well, am I short? Am I long? And, did I miss a canal? And I just wanted my homies back. And in fact, I hired an associate the first year I was out, just because I can't run this over the assistant, the receptionist, and, I just want another person. And then one day I was on I've never had an original idea. I mean, my next door neighbor, Kenny Anderson, was a dentist. I didn't even go 2 doors down. I mean, who knows what the hell he was doing? Maybe he was a plumber. I don't even know. And on this Dentaltown, I was on the ESPN website, and they were talking about football, which is my true addiction. I admit it. I've wasted countless hours watching the NFL. It's embarrassing if you knew how much of my life I wasted watching those things. And I thought, oh my God, I want to talk about root canals to dentist. So I looked on the deal, and they're running it off this BBC bulletin board software out of London. And back then we, snail mail. I sent them a letter with my check for $300, and then 6 weeks later, nothing. And I thought, I've been duped. And finally came in the mail. And we installed it, and it was Dentaltown. And I just wanted the community. At the time, they said the internet was going to do 5 C's. It was going to have commercials like banner ads. It was going to have content like articles, connectivity to your other devices, and commerce like Amazon. And it could have sold dental supplies, but I didn't sell dental supplies because that one rep that comes in once a week, she was my only outside connection to the world. And I didn't give a shit what endophile that she used, but if I said, hey, there's some really good endodontists out here. What does Jason Hale use in Mesa? And she'd say, oh, he used the Tulsa .04 Pro Taper. I said, what about Gettleman in Glendale? Same file. Okay, that was my connection. Now I know I'm going to use that file because I'll never do one root canal in my life as good as Gettleman or Hale. And so I wasn't getting, so the only C left was the community. And I thought my homies were intellectually starving because what the phone line did well is it killed distance. Two people want to talk and they're 1,000 kilometers apart, right? But what the internet was good is it killed distance and time. So you could send me an email while I was doing a root canal and I could find it later. And my gosh, when we opened up that community, I think it made dentistry better. I think we left the playground better than we found it. And by the way, the number one complaint on that thing is of an anonymity. And I want to explain that because everybody's been bitching about it for 25 years. The bottom line is this. I care more about dentistry than myself. And there has to be a place to ask a stupid question. And you're not going to log on as, Dr. Elon Musk, DDS, in Canada, here's my address, and here's my root canal I just perfed. Now other endodontists are sending that case to all the other referrals. And I know who they are. You have to register on site. There's 275,000 dentists registered. I know who every one of them is. And when we ping your email and it no longer works, we freeze your account. You can no longer post. I have to know who you are. And we just need a website, your face, something that proves that you're real. And I think they go on there and and it's archived too. All the other social medias are LIFO, last in, first out, and you're just scrolling. It's kind of like entertainment. But if you broke a file in an MB2, you could just go to the search. There's 6 million posts and put in broken file MB2, and you'd pull up every single case about that. And those cases still getting read, but no one's added to it for years because it's an FAQ. There's no more questions you can ask. Right. And then maybe something will come out, and then you can post it on the end of that so a young kid sees the whole body of the conversation. But I think it's just amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing you've really done for the profession is you've really centralized a lot of the dentistry business news into one kind of cohesive, easy to use website. One thing you probably don't know about me is as soon as I left management consulting and went into dentistry, I wanted to start a dentistry business account on Instagram. I did that, found it was a bit of an echo chamber, and you were just doing it so much better. So I just quit. But one thing you're really doing is you're really making and you're really paving the way in centralizing that dentistry business news, which I think is really great.
Yeah, well, thanks for the kind words. It's been a very, very fun journey, and I just think the whole is greater than the sum. And the other thing, a lot of the dentists are little totalitarian dictators. Like they'll do a root canal that's short, and their assistant's not going to say anything. The hygienist isn't going to say anything. They'll cement a crown that's open, and everybody says nothing. And you post your case on Dentaltown, and you say, well, I'm all that in a bag of chips. If you don't believe me, just ask me. And then someone's like, actually, that sucks. That case is, actually, that's wrong. Here's a study. And see, on Facebook and Twitter, you just delete those people. You block them. You unfollow them. But this is a community. It's not about you. It's bigger than you. And that's all religion means. I mean, religion, to me, God only means, well, are you the center of the universe? I mean, we used to think the sun went around the earth. And then when Copernicus figured out that the earth goes around the sun, and Galileo openly talked about it, he had to spend the last 7 years of his life in jail because the Catholic Church said, no, that is wrong. It goes around Rome. And I think Dentaltown is a very humbling experience because when you get on there, you're not in your tribe where you're a 5-star general and everybody else is infantry. There's a lot of big dogs on there, and they can call you on your shit, and that's what you need. You got to stay humble and be poised to learn and be able to hold a thought and disregard it. I'll give you an example. My oldest sister who has more YouTube followers than me. She has a nun channel talking to nuns, right? She has more followers on YouTube than I do. If I spent 40 years with her, I couldn't convert her to a Lutheran, let alone a Hindu or a Buddhist or, they're not open for debate. And dentists are scientists, and they got to hang on to the scientific method. And when somebody shows you that is wrong, you have to suck it up, buttercup, and say, okay, I got to do it differently.
For sure. And I think that speaks to a really good point on your experience and your outreach with social media. You have a incredible social media following, and it just keeps going. I think you have something like 300 Facebook followers, 25,000 Twitter followers. 35,000 LinkedIn followers. You're doing really great on social media. What has that really meant for yourself, your own brand and your own image, as well as you have a private practice? What has that meant, and how have you found those synergies there?
Well, when I started my dental office, I was taking 300 hours of CE a year because I was running to every course, either in the kitchen, I'm trying to learn how to make a souffle and a cake and a pie, a root canal, build up and crown. So you had all that going on. I got my FAGD, MAGD, but then the business thing. I would go over to any dental office across the street and I'd say, well, how much you charge for a filling? He says, $250. And he says, but we really shouldn't be talking about this. I said, well, first of all, you don't even charge $250 for a filling. I've already talked to your office manager. You're signed up with 9 different PPOs, and the fillings you're getting paid for this standard filling is between $100 and $225. And then you tell me you're getting $250. So are you stoned? And if you at $250, if your overhead was 50%, well, then why are you taking this one for $110? So you're just going to lose two $20 bills every time you do a filling. So my homies, it's a double-edged sword. It's why I love them. I mean, they went to school 8 years to get you out of pain and fix your body. God dang, I love them, and they're so different than like lawyers, my gosh, I love them, but they just want to learn a new recipe to cook. They don't care about if you say, well, what is your table cost? I mean, you got 40 tables in this restaurant. You have a little, what do you call it, a tablecloth. And I'm looking at your laundry bill, and if you would just lose the tablecloth, you would lose $1,000 a month expense, and that'd be $12,000 a year, and you didn't even have $12,000 of profit last year. So is this all about just supporting tablecloths? I mean, were you born to salvage tablecloths? I mean, so trying to get them, you don't have to be a leader to get dentists interested in placing implants and Invisalign. I mean, that's what they naturally do. To be a leader is to, when you take their nose and say, okay, last year, 2020, what was your return on asset? I mean, that's a basic question. They have no idea. Well, what's your return on equity? No idea. Well, what's your profit? I mean, you ask them any accounting number, and it's like deers in the headlights.
Do you think more dentists can benefit from having an MBA like yourself?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you about the MBA. When dental school was over, I missed my friends, but I said a little prayer that I hope I never meet this dean in an alley at 1 o'clock in the morning behind any bar that sells whiskey. So you had all that. Whereas MBA school, it was 200 class, same size. And it was Monday and Wednesday from 6 to 10. So it was 2 courses. One was 6 to 8, one was 8 to 10, and it was 3 trimesters. So it was 2 core courses, 3 trimesters, 2 years. So it was 12 courses, 12 textbooks, and everybody already had an undergrad degree. So when you showed up to class, everyone had already read the book. And they would just talk about, they're trying to learn, and some of them were big high managers at grocery stores, some were hospitals, some were everything, some were nonprofits, and some were government. You should hear the government stories. Those just like, the stories from Intel, those are like really sophisticated. The stories from the government people are like, oh my God, it's just like a step down. So when it was over, I can still remember driving home thinking how sad I was going to be because I was going to have to go back to Monday Night Football instead of Monday night, 2 classes MBA school. It was amazing. And then the networking, I live in this town with those 200 people. And a lot of them I'll call and say, well, this is my problem. And they say, oh, well, my friend does that. And, so you start this whole networking thing. And I think the MBA school was amazing. And let me tell you how amazing it is. You remember, there's only 3 publicly traded dental chains on earth. And 2 of them are in Australia. One 300 Smiles and Pacific Smile. And the other one's in Singapore, Q&M. Not one of these DSOs could go public tomorrow. Snapchat did. And what was that? That was a technology so that I could take a body part picture, text it to you. You open it, you get one look, and it disappears. Yeah, that's good enough to go public. But something with 1,000 locations that can pull wisdom teeth and get you out of pain, that can't. So their overhead is not profitable. They're just buying their sales stream. So they'll raise $100 million. They'll go buy 100 offices at $1 million a piece. Say, look at us. We went from 0 to 100 million. Oh, you're talking about your balance sheet, right? Because on your balance sheet, I certainly see the $100 billion in debt. And they're like, no, go to the P&L. We have 100 million in revenue. Yeah, they're not profitable. And with my LinkedIn followers for decades, brokers from Wall Street will send me a deal and say, we're looking at this deal. This guy's wanting to raise money, and we're thinking, why don't they just go public? And we're looking at these numbers, and we don't get it. I mean, it's just, it's not profitable. It's like, well, congratulations. You learned your math well. They can't go public. And here's what's going to be the most exciting is, Joseph Schumpeter got a Nobel Prize in Economics and Business Cycles, the Australian economist. And when they asked him, I read his book, Cycles. Well, why are there all these cycles? He's like, well, you know who's making all the decisions, right? 8 billion crazy monkeys who lost their tail. I mean, they're batshit crazy. So they see you quit doing dentistry and go and buying rental properties for Airbnb. So like, well, he's smart. I'm going to do that. So then everybody runs to the same door until it explodes. And these guys can't go public, and it's crazy. And it'll be interesting to see. But these DSOs, again, if I was going to look at any DSO today. I'll just tell you some. I'll tell you some basic facts. Let me show you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think it's going to do for dentistry at large? Because in the U.S. and the States, you have far greater market penetration than what we have here. I think you have 7.5%. We have less than 1% of practices owned and operated by DSOs. So, what do you think it's going to actually do to the industry at large?
Well, that's a great question, and there's so many variables now. So number one, we look at the fact that 2 out of 3 of their dentists are women. So you got to understand there's been a change of demographics, and these women dentists are always married to a male dentist, doctor, banker, lawyer, whatever. They're always married to someone with a full-time job, where a man is usually 2 out of 3 times married to a stay-home spouse. So the women are the big part of the labor force on this thing. But you sell the invisible. When I go buy a bottled water, I know this is bottled water. When I buy an iPhone, I know exactly what it is, and I know it's not an Android. But when I go to you and you tell me I have 4 cavities, I'm naked with trust. I just have to believe it's true or not. In fact, that's why the Supreme Court 100 years ago said, no, you're not innocent until proven guilty, because you're a doctor, you're a dentist, and the asymmetry of information is so great that you're acting as an agent representing this person. What if they told you instead of penicillin, they wanted to take cyanide, so you wrote them a script for it and they all died? They're going to sit there and say, dude, you're a doctor, you had 8 years of college, and you didn't know the difference between cyanide and penicillin. So you're acting as an agent on behalf of this person. But it's got you're selling the invisible. And so here's a problem with DSOs is Arizona did the right thing. They got the government out of the way, and they said, look, it turned out in Arizona it was easier to find a nurse to work in a hospital in Ireland and getting her to move in America than it was from California. And the governor's like, what the hell? Because the state boards are these massive monopolies that broke every segment of healthcare from the bottom up. And he said, look, if you're licensed in any other state, you can come to Arizona and you're licensed. So we're ground zero for DSO. So 18 out of every 100 dentists in Arizona works for DSO. And you're right, when you look at the long tail of 50 states, 5 states don't even have 1% penetration, like you were saying it was up in Canada. So, it's ground zero, and every place does the same thing. Well, I went in there, and the dentist said I had 4 cavities. So when I went back in there to do it, I said, well, where's Dr. Chawla? He's no longer here. We got Susie Q. And then she says, you have 3 cavities. And you can't sell the invisible, because when you sell the invisible and you're a trust-based organization, brand names is everything. Look at Heartland. They don't even call their stores Heartland. They're all called a different name. They don't want everybody to say, oh, those are all Heartlands. Like you do with Aspen Dental, where you can build a brand. So that brand, it's high risk, because if you ever make 2020 and someone died in your office, it's going to hurt the whole brand. But the bottom line is you sell the invisible. It's all trust based. And when you look at some great companies, let's leave dentistry and go to do they have In-N-Out? They don't have In-N-Out burgers in Canada.
I know what it is though.
Okay, so like In-N-Out burger, their average office manager. First of all, the franchisee can only have 1 location. A lot of these DSOs, they want to have 8 or 9. Well, you can't manage 8 like you can 1. So the franchisee's only allowed 1 location at In-N-Out Burger and Chick-fil-A. Their average office manager, the average dentist makes 175. Their office manager makes 160 and stays there 14 years. So, you're selling dentistry and you can't keep the dentist. I mean, I find any kid out of school 5 years, they've had 5 different jobs. You've had 5 places where you could say, treat other people like you want to be treated. This is where I'd want to send my baby. This is where I want to send my mom. I love this place. I love my team. I mean, and then when dentists quit, why do they quit? And then the dentist says, in dental school, due to COVID, we only did 2 root canals. And I finally had my first molar root canal. And I slept, on the ceiling all night sweating. And I finally got there to do this root canal. I was scared to death. And my trustworthy assistant that's been with me there 3 months, now she's gone. And they say, screw this place. And then he wants this file. And the MBA office manager says, well, we got a cheaper file and it's, blah, blah. And so you got non-doctors making the decision on buying doctor equipment and supplies. It's kind of like when when I would do my supplies, they'd ask me what he would do for the hygiene. And I'd say, well, the hygienists are going to order the supplies. I don't do cleanings all day long. I don't know the difference in Prophy paste. It would be so narcissistic for me to say, well, I could make better hygiene decision on supplies and purchases than the hygienist. So stay in your lane. The hygienists can buy their supplies. They can reappoint their 6-month recalls. And we need dentists. The bottom line is when I made 4 boys. And they were all dependent on me. And now they're all dependent. And they each own their own home. And now they've made 6 dependents on them. Well, I see how this works. When any of those 6 have a kid, I'm dead. Okay, I get it. I'm the next out. So when Evelyn or Raya Rue makes a baby, Grandpa's gone. And when Raya Rue has a toothache and she goes to the dentist, well, if it's Kaiser Permanente in Oregon where they own 9 locations, is that a dentist or is that an insurance company? If it's owned by Wall Street, it's an MBA, and you say, well, don't do a filling for 100, do a crown for 1,000. I mean, I just need one place where my grandchildren go where it's owned by a dentist. Where a dentist is saying, this is what you need, not the insurance company that wants to collect the claim and collect the payment for insurance and not pay the claim, or Wall Street. I mean, look at Wall Street. I mean, everybody thinks that they're just holier than saints. I mean, my God, they gave them all these tax breaks and all they did is bought back shares of stocks because that's how their bonus structure is set up. They don't give a shit about the United States or the globe or their customers. They care about their own incentives. And to just get people to get off naked greed and actually try to do something that helps your fellow man and treat. I mean, my sister, the oldest one, she read every major religion and she translated them all. And she said there's not a name of a person, place, or city in all the major religions. The only thing that you can find in all major religions is the golden rule. Treat other people like you want to be treated. And it's every one of them. Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam. They all say this exactly to where it'd be called plagiarism if you wrote it on a school paper. And right. that's all religion in one word. When that patient's coming in, well, what the hell would you do if it was your mouth? And once I tell these young kids, you tell me these stories, I said, wait a minute, so you're saying that if you work there, you're going to have to treat that patient like you wouldn't want to be treated? Dude, why are we having this conversation? Leave today. And sure, you can pass laws that say that you can't own a dental office unless you're a dentist and all these things like that. But, it's the same with, look at Boeing. Boeing has not had a very pretty last couple of years, right? No. They've been really shitty. Well, think about that. I mean, I can see it 100 miles away. When I read the autobiographies of Honda and Toyota, I mean, the whole car was made in one plant. And if you shut down the assembly line, it woke up Mr. Honda. And one night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, the alarm went off, and he ran down there. He forgot he slept naked, and he's on the line, butt naked, at like 60, 70 years old, re-engineering this thing. So then, when you go to lunch and you're all in one place, you're saying, the maintenance. I mean, those windshield wipers. I mean, it's like 1 out of every 10 people has a problem with a windshield wiper. What do? And you say, oh, I'm the windshield wiper design guy. Dude, and you might not have known this, and they just make superior products. Look at Boeing. The airplanes assembled in Seattle, and the management teams in Chicago, and the fuselages are made in Wichita, Kansas. I mean, hello? Hello, it's not about trying to build an airplane. And now they're outsourcing it to other countries, other parts, so that will help them get sales in China or another country. It's like, can we just make a damn airplane first? Can we get everybody in the staff room that's making an airplane first so they don't fall out of the sky? Can we just start there and then address all these other less weighted concerns lately? So, and look at the DSOs. When medicine started to consolidate into group. Look at their brands. Mayo Clinic, they just want to be the best. The one in New York, Sloan Keeter Fettering, Cleveland Center. Name the DSO that is the Mercedes-Benz of dentistry. They're just all, they all have the same business model. We're going to go to the suburbs where they make $60,000 a year or more and have good benefits, and we're just going to get the better location, better marketing, better whatever. And of course, our dentists are going to have rapid turnover. The average dentist won't even stay with us 1 or 2 years. No one at the DSO level has even tried to make quality job one. Like Ford. Ford says quality is job one. I assume job two is to make shitty trucks. I mean, if quality is job one, and I'm looking at your product, number two must be the opposite. So, just.
So back to what that means for the patient. As you said, they may have some incentives that are largely fueled by Wall Street, and that's one thing. But I think the argument on the other side of the coin has also been made that because these DSOs are able to buy things at scale, because they're able to leverage their size, they're able to then turn that cost saving to the patient, and then that'll make dentistry a little bit more accessible for those that may have not been able to access it in the traditional family practice model. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think if any of that, if just one sentence of that was true, they could go public tomorrow. And that's not what they see. I mean, think about this. So first of all, I don't like the term DSO, and I'm very good friends with all the DSO leaders, so I don't want to sit here and throw, Rick Kirschner under a bus, who's been on this show. I mean, Rick Workman and all these guys. I love them to death. They're trying hard. They're innovators, and they work all day, every day, and they try to do the right thing. But the bottom line is, it's not a DSO, it's group. So you start out solo, and you pay your rent, and there's 168 hours in a week, and you can really only do dentistry 32. You can't do a root canal at hour 40 with the same intensity as hour 1. I mean, there is a human limit to a number of root canals. You need to sleep 8 hours a night. You got family. You got all these other things. So you sit there, and now you're closed. You're open 19% of the week, and you're closed 81% of the week. Well, availability. Well, your patients aren't excited at that. So you bring in an associate to cover more hours, but you have more group practice. Is always a more healthy environment. I mean, when you find a dentist that's showing up to work with a bottle of vodka in his hand, drinking the Listerine between patients and eating pain pills, he's a little dictator, and the whole staff is frightened and nobody knows what to do. Until you go to the funeral, then they're all like, we should have done something, But in group, I can sit there and say, dude, are you drunk? I swear to God, you're drunk. Get out of here. And don't ever do that again. Or what if you did a root canal and you missed a whole canal, or you're a centimeter short? So that's competition. Remember we talked about opaque or transparency, checks and balance, competition. So group is competition on the diet, and also something about tunnel vision. Like whenever I'm working on a molar and I just cannot find the MB2, I'll finally get mad and I'll walk back there and I'll say, damn it, I've been looking, I can't find it. And then one of them will high-five me and go in there, and all fresh eyes, I don't know what I was looking at, take a 6 file and just drop it right in. Say, I found it. Same with the root tip. You can be digging after some root tip for 20 minutes, and I can go out and pop it in a second. Because you got tunnel vision, you got lost. Something got lost, so a fresh set of eyes and hands always does it. So you start off solo. It's very lonely. You're not available for the patient. You're not utilizing your asset. It's closed 4 out of 5 hours. So you go from solo to group. And then you go from group from one location to 2. Now, here's where DSOs go off the charts. First level DSO, and that's what you got to know, first level. So you're in a town of 250,000, and Facebook, and which is now an Alphabet, which owns Google and YouTube, they've sucked out about 85 cents of every marketing dollar in the United States. And TV's barely hanging on with stuff like the NFL and college football, but radio is dead on arrival, and newspapers. So you're in this town at 250,000, and you're like, oh my God, I'm just on the south side, and my marketing cost is I'm paying about $300 for every new patient head. But if I opened up a north, south, east, west, I could get one layer of management. I could have a full-time accountant, lawyer, HR, marketing. And then since it's all 4 locations, we can get a billboard where the highway and the interstate meet, and then the radio. I mean, look at Clear Choice. It was so successful because they could buy 30-minute infomercials on television all day long, and then they track it. Okay, we bought a 30-minute infomercial, and it didn't cost $100. Did it get a lead or not? Did someone call Clear Choice and come in and get an all-on-4 or not? And they're just moving around their dollars. And finally, Aspen Dental bought it. And that's perfect because Aspen Dental's got 1,000 locations. So anybody asks them at all-on-4, they can just funnel all those out over to Clear Choice.
So the consolidation of resources is for sure great.
Yeah, and so that's fantastic. But I think that so then a big DSO. Say Heartland at Effingham looks at this little DSO in a town of Fargo, North Dakota, and they got 4 locations, and they buy that. Now you're at a second layer of overhead. And these guys want 17 cents off the dollar. You're talking about buying money to save supplies. My total lab bill in supplies isn't 17%. I mean, most lab bills are 8 to 10 and supplies 4 to 6. So are they going to do something so efficient that now I get free supplies and free lab bills? Hell no. They're just more overhead. Every layer of management. In fact, that's what's the beauty about recessions, because, you keep going along with everything because you can. And then you have a big recession. You have a 10, 20% contraction in sales. And you're like, you know what? We got to get rid of this department. First of all, we don't know what they're doing. What you'll find out during a recession is that half the people that you fire, you could actually replace with a rubber plant. And, and you're like, well, why was I giving this guy all this money with medical and dental? Because I replaced him with a fake plant. They're structurally too much overhead. And I think that the DSO in a small town, I mean, whenever I meet a dentist who's their income's $3 to $4 million, they're taking home 1.5. They own 4 locations in a small market, and they own the TV, they own the radio, they own the billboards, and they can have 1 layer of management because, when I go into a solo dental office, I say, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm the office manager. Okay, well, I'm going to sit here all day and watch you office manage, answering the phone, scheduling appointments, doing finance run, checking out. I said, you know what? You eerily remind me of a front office receptionist. I still haven't seen any of this office manager stuff. You know what I mean? It's title and only. You need someone who can just do marketing full time. And this is why franchises have about a 95% success rate. And, you open up a restaurant, 1 out of 3 are bankrupt in 2 years, and 2 out of 3 are bankrupt in 4 years. And in dentistry, less than 1% go bankrupt, and they all go bankrupt for the same reason. They have their license taken away. And it's about 80% of the time alcohol, 15%, others, and are legal or whatever. But basically the mob has to take your license away to make you go bankrupt. It's not competitive. I mean, look at donuts. Look at donut stores. Talk about the whole business. Oh my God. The average donut stores open at 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. And then a dentist tells me that dentistry is competitive. Are you out of your mind? They don't even know what competition is.
You don't think that sentiment of there's a dentist on every street corner and there's no point of going to dentistry anymore, there's no point of opening a family practice because it's too competitive, you don't think that holds any merit?
No. I'm selling the invisible. And they go to your store and Dr. Steve Jobs says you got 4 fillings. They come in, Jobs is gone. Elon says now you got 3. And it's like in dental school. You would start it with this one doctor and he'd say, okay, do an MOD amalgam. But you get another guy to finish at the end. And he'd come in and say, well, it shouldn't have been MOD amalgam. It should have been MODBL. I mean, it's like, stick with one guy, stick with one experience. And this patient doesn't know what a cavity is, doesn't know the difference between a root canal. I mean, I could take your smartest patient that you've educated the most, pull out a pano and say, God, I'm glad I took this pano, point right to a mental foramen, say, look at that cyst. Look at that cyst. If I didn't take this pano and I didn't remove this, you'd lose all the teeth up there. And you know how I can tell it's genetic and you inherit it only from your dad? Look, at the exact same place on the other side is another cyst, the 2 mental foramens. And, they would just go along with it. I mean, the courts have already said, I don't care what they agree to. I don't even care about your stupid consent form, which had 5,000 words of Latin and Greek. Oh, Mary, you signed a still that this implant will be close to the inferior alveolar nerve. Can you tell me about the inferior alveolar nerve? Where is it? what does it do? They don't know a damn thing. There's it's like when they you talk about the biggest argument for no democracy is look at the billion people on Facebook that just click the accept agreement, where if you print it out, it's 3.5 foot thick. I mean, you basically signed your whole life away. They got limited time, money, and resources, and you're acting as an agent on behalf of them, just like a CEO is acting as a steward of these people who you didn't make. You didn't give birth to these babies. You didn't educate them in school. You didn't feed them, clothe them. You didn't get that workforce here. That wasn't you. You just harvested some resources and trying to make a money, but you still got to be a steward to your community. I mean, no man is an island, and to think that it's all you and you're all that in a bag of chips and no one else matters, that always ends very badly.
For sure. It'll be interesting to see how it goes down in the future and seeing the different factors come into play. But one thing I wanted to jump to is your podcast, Dentistry Uncensored. You have an incredibly successful podcast. You have over 1,500 episodes, 8 million downloads. You've had on some really big hitters, Abba, Rosenthal, you name it. You've had them all on. What is that like? How did you get started in that? And what is that like to keep it going and keeping those numbers ever increasing?
I was a dentist in '87, and then I became a journalist in 1994 by starting my own magazine. And I started my own magazine because I was published 4 times in JADA, and every time it came to me, I read my own article, and I'm like, oh, who wrote that? I mean, they edited everything out I said, and they said, well, Howard, you can't say that. Because it was all about, we're afraid we might offend Mrs. Wimpleton, and we might get a nasty worded letter, and I was like, forget this. And I said, you know what, the only person who's going to publish, and I'm only talking to you like I respect you. Like, if I didn't respect you, I would lie to you, and I'd tell you what you want to hear. But if I respect you, I'd say, dude, you step out on that street, you're going to get ran over by a car when you're 2. And then when you're coming out of dental school, you go to that town, you're not going to pay off your student loans for the first decade. I just want to, I think if I love you and respect you, I'm going to tell you what I think. Now, I could be wrong, and every dentist out there can name 5 things I'm wrong on, but they respect the fact that at least they know what I think. Whereas in America, if you see a man with a tie on, you assume the tie is to keep the foreskin from coming up over his head, and it's just a bag of lies and, no transparency. And so I call my podcast Dentistry Uncensored, and I like to level the playing field. I like to get on my guests. Like some people get mad and say, well, why did you have a holistic dentist on? Oh, I don't know. Are you now Stalin? Do you have a list of people that should just be sent to Siberia? I mean, what? So now only you can talk, you dumbass. If you can't hear the difference and a different point of view from another doctor of dental surgery, you should be telling this to your psychiatrist, not to me. And I hope they find a medication for you. I mean, just relax and listen. And I like to think I'm taking people's mind out for a ride. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're ready to shoot me, you have some serious issues. If you're listening to this, say, well, I see where he's coming, but he's old, fat, senile from Kansas. I'm young and in San Francisco, and I don't think it applies to San Francisco or Cambodia or Australia, whatever. But I just like to level the playing field with honesty, and I'm just going to tell you what I actually think. And what you do with it is your call. But here's my belief of knowledge. Knowledge has no value unless it's transferable. And, like they built those pyramids, but no one wrote anything down. And it took 2,500 years later around the bathtub basin Mediterranean before the Greeks started putting this stuff to math. And when people said, well, do you think the pyramids were built with geometry? Yeah, probably, And so I just think that it'd have been really nice if the Egyptians would have wrote something down on how they did this. And what's really nice, I think, for me is when I'm 60 and going out and you're 25 and you're brand new, I say, hey, by the way, I wrote a little book on your journey. You're going to run into these parks and trees and waterfalls, and here's a heads up of what you're coming to. I mean, I just think that the profession is greater than a dentist. And I think the world has 8 billion people and only 2 million are dentists. So there's about 1 dentist for every 6,500 people. And so we're one group of people. And I think we should be in charge of our own destiny. And I think we should all work together, because when you graduate from dental school, your mom and dad don't cry because you invented dentistry. I mean, this dentistry's been going on since Pierre Fichard in France. And by the way, dentistry is especially a medicine. orthodontics isn't a specialty of dentistry. It's a subspecialty of dentistry, which is a specialty of medicine. And it was Pierre Fichard who said, no more barber surgeons. We're not cutting hair anymore. We're just doing dentistry only, and we're going to write a book. And so it was that 200 years. You're standing on the shoulders of millions of dentists for 200 years. And my gosh, and you're just going to take it a millimeter farther. And, you know, what I have done with stealing ESPN bulletin board and bringing it to dentistry, that's about as significant as getting hit by a piece of dust. But we all got to work together. We all got to keep one eye on the patient and one eye on costs, because if we don't use our brain to make dentistry affordable, then our patients don't have the freedom to afford to keep their body parts. I mean, imagine you got your first eye infection, so they cut out your eye. You get an ear infection, so they hack off your ear. I mean, in America, at age 65, 10% of Americans have 0 teeth, and at 75, it's 20%. Well, I don't want 1 in 5 Americans to lose every damn tooth in their head before they're 75. We could do better than that. And, you know, so it's, and they're crazy because, like, water fluoridation. I mean, fluoride is the 13th most common element in the planet. It shows up in the ocean at 1.4 part per million. That covers, you know, 71% of the planet. When we put it in the drinking water at half the level it's found in the ocean, it massively drops decay. And what do they say? Well, that's a communist plot. It's just a bunch of communists trying to kill me. And you're like, whatever. So humans, the best thing they do better than anything is to believe disconnected shit that, you know, from nowhere. I mean, they just, and that's the price of being awareness. You know, a dog or a cat lives, he's trapped in the present. He's always watching the animals, the weather, the trees. He sees a car drive by. He can't disconnect and think. So for us to be able to be aware of our existence, we have to disconnect from the present. So you're no longer connected to reality. So now you're just sitting back and you're thinking all this wild shit, and you have a hard time separating, well, this is a fantasy and this is real shit. And if you're not connected into the present, which means if you can't show me an observation that has a shape, you know, it's like geometry. We're just getting back to zero. We got to get back to 0 degrees, and you got to show me a right angle. It's only right if there's a right angle. And you say, oh, well, I don't have an observation, and I can't weigh it or measure it, or it's just right up here in my liver. And you got to be able to separate that them are disconnected people, and they're fine. Humans have always lived under that condition. I think the neatest thing I love about Sapien is every civilization on every continent came up with a 7-day week that started on Sunday. And you know why?
Why?
Because 9 out of 10 humans always lived in the north of the equator. They don't know why. Only 1 in 10 lived in the south, but they all lived in the north. And when they went around, they saw these fixed stars that they called astrology, Virgo and Cancer and Taurus and all this stuff. But there were 7 objects. That's why there's 7 days to the week in every culture, because there were 7 celestial objects that were following them around and staring at them. And the sun was the biggest. So the first day of the week is Sunday. And the second day of the week is the moon is the next biggest. It's Monday. And then the other ones are going to be names in Latin or Greek of Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter. And those were the 7 celestial objects that they're all sitting there like, why are they following us around? They're looking at us. So they thought the sun was a god. But the bottom line is, you know, we just need to understand the human condition and realize that humans are batshit crazy. I think 1 in 4 of the 8 billion humans are completely batshit crazy, and they're totally fine as long as they're nonviolent. I mean, I don't care if you tell me about astrology all day long, but if you're going to shoot me because I don't believe it, now it's a crime scene. You know what I mean? So mind your own business. 1 in 4 crazy, and you know it's a fact because you went to your own family reunion. I mean, if 1 out of 4 of your uncles and relatives aren't crazy, then you're the crazy one. You're the one they're all saying, oh, yeah, my God, you should, oh, my God, when you meet a kill, you're going to, oh, my God. So the 1 in 4 are crazy unless, and if there's none, it's you.
when you can't find them, just look inward. But I think that's one thing that I love about dentistry to stop there. I think one thing I love about you is you're so candid and there's so few degrees of separation between you and your audience that you're able to attain in a podcast that you're not necessarily able to attain through print media. Or, you've written a book, and I'm sure, it was a great process, and I'm sure you were as honest as possible. But again, whenever you put something on paper, there's like degrees and of separation between you and your ideas and you and your audience. Has it ever gotten you in trouble?
Telling what I actually believe?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I've given twice in the United States and once in Canada. I gave a lecture, and the following week that state banned me from lecturing there again. And when they did it, it got me like 10 more invitationals. Everybody's like, did you really get banned from Missouri and Rhode Island? And this back in the 80s. And I said, yeah, I did. Well, I got to hear what the hell you're saying. I got to hear this. But my deal was, I saw this all the time. I would go to a lecture, and by lunchtime, half the classes didn't come back from lunch. And then the afternoon break, and lost another half. And then at the end of the day, there's like 5 people sitting there, and this idiot's still standing behind a podium reading all these slides and whatever. And then you say, hey, you need a beer, let's go to the bar. And then 3 or 4 drinks later, he's all liquored up, giving the best root canal lecture of your life. And I said to him, I asked him during the class, I said, well, what do you think about Thermofil? Well, these gutter per job. But at the bar, he's like, hell no, I hate them. And they're hard to remove, And I'd always say, well, why don't you talk like that in the seminar? And I just got to give you some seminar advice, because it's the same thing with treatment plan, case acceptance. The average American will buy 13 cars in their lifetime for a median price of $33,000, starting at 16 to 76. Every 4.6 years, they buy a brand new car. And 95% of the dentists will never do one treatment plan for $33,500. So your patient, this poor patient who has no money, buys a new $30,000 car every 5 years. And it used to be, when they financed it for 4 years, they used to buy a new car every 3 years and 9 months. But when they went to 60-month financing, basically they just hang on to the lease until it's almost paid off. And the minute it's paid off, they upgrade to a new one. And it's like, and then when they come into you, you say, well, Akhil, you're a victim of the insurance company, and they only give us $1,000 a year max. And so you have 32 teeth. Which tooth is the shittiest? And we'll just work on that tooth this year, because not until our Lord God and Savior dental insurance company gives us another $1,000. Just lose it. The only people that build up dental insurance companies are all the individual dentists. 5% I'm looking there and say, Akhil, here's the deal. I'm looking at you. You're 20 years old. Let's say, I could just, you broke a tooth, I could smooth it off, I could fix it nice, or I could look at you and your wisdom teeth need to come out. But, are you looking at, you want me to just fix you up brand new? Or are you just here for one little reason and we can do that? It's all about you. It's not about me. Do you want all fixed up brand new, like getting a brand new car, or do you just want to fix one broken thing? And, and you say that to 10 people, one of them always says, I want a brand new car. And those dentists work Monday through Thursday, just like everyone else. But every Friday they go in there, and a anesthesiologist meets them there and puts them to sleep. And if the patient needs 3 root canals, Doc's not going to do 3 molars in a row. So he'll bring in his buddy, the endodontist, and he'll say, I'll give you half the take on that. The root canals are $1,200. You'll get $600. And then when he's done with the root canals, you need 3 implants. It's like, why am I going to place the implant? I got a periodontist. If none will come from your town, just go to the next town over, and that guy will come up because he's not cannibalizing his own territory, and he'll place the 3 implants. And I'm just the conductor. I just put all this together, and a $30,000 case is knocked out. But it's knocked out because I could present it, because I'm not a cripple thinking, well, is the insurance company going to be okay with this? Is Wall Street going to be okay with this? Shut the hell up. It's a $70 trillion global economy, and Americans buy $30,000 cars in their lifetime. Just tell them what's wrong, and does he want to fix it all? Or just one thing? I don't care. It's your mouth. It's not me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that financial aspect of dentistry is just such a pain to deal with, because people have to make these tough decisions, and it's just annoying, to be quite frank. And it's just something that needs to be fixed moving forwards. But you're contributing to the education of dentists and dentists' ability to be financially independent. You wrote a book, you're an Amazon best-selling author, Uncomplicate Business. we talk about some of the key facets of running a business, including, people, time, money, and you break them down. What was the process of writing that book like? I know there's this quote, and I'll paraphrase it because I don't have it exactly, but it goes something like, "Everyone hates writing, everyone loves having written." So what was the process of writing that book like?
Well, that's a really, really great question. And it's a very deep personal question. I had turned 50, and my oldest son made me my first granddaughter. When I got married, I wanted to have one little girl named Megan, and I got 4 little wieners, and Eric, Greg, Ryan, and Zach. And I never got my daughter. And my first grandkid was another boy, and I finally got my granddaughter. I finally got my daughter, and I realized, okay, well, let's think about this objectively. When I go to, my brother did it for me, but he went to Ancestry.com and he looked up all the life expectancies going back 8 generations, not just your dad, which turned into 2, which turned into 4 grandparents, to 8, to 16, to 32, to 64. He went back 8 generations, both sides, and the average male in my family tree lived to be 64 and a half. I'm not dumb. I have no memories of my either grandfather, but I remember my grandma's. And women last 5 years longer than boys because women don't have a need to work in the logging industry, the mining industry, the fishing industry. The men always select jobs. About 30,000 Americans are killed each year in accidents. And when a roofer falls off a roof and to his death, do you think it was a boy or a girl? Boys always pick all the jobs that kill you. We live 5 years shorter. But I realized Taylor was born, and I was 50, and I thought, okay, I'm 50. My business does $1 million a month. I'm a dentist. I got an MBA. I got 50 employees. I'm not Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, but I learned something in half a century, and this is my granddaughter. So I took all my monthly columns from 94 to the day I wrote that. I laid them all on the floor. I didn't know if she's going to be a dentist. I didn't know if she's going to have a restaurant. So I took out all the dentist stuff, and I finally condensed it down, and everything fell into 3 columns: people, time, or money. And I call it Uncomplicate Business by Howard Ferran. I never put a DDS in there or anything like that. And the whole thing was written to Taylor. And the first draft was 600 pages, and the secret to writing is rewriting. The second draft was 400 pages. Then I hired an editor, and she got it down to 200 pages. And I put out that book, and it was a private book from Grandpa to his granddaughter, Taylor, which now could be Raya or Evelyn or Jasper or Gunnar, Mason, Donnell, whatever. So it was a private deal, and I got a lot of great reviews from that because I just kept simplifying. I always say, if you're a plumber and I'm a dentist, when I explain a root canal to a plumber, I got to explain it like a 5-year-old. And when a plumber's telling me about my garbage disposal, I don't know the shit first thing about plumbing. So when you're talking to someone that's not in their 10,000 hours, their outlier or whatever the heck that guy said, you got to explain it like it's 5. And I think getting that down from 600 to 400 to 200 pages, I mean, just the numbers part, just to explain to you, like how I explain to my grandchildren on profit. I say, well, okay, this bottle of water cost me $1 to make, and I sold it for, I sold this for $1, and the cap is just the profit. It was just 10%. So this bottled water I sell for $1, I make 10%. So I have a 10% profit margin. Now, if the factory that I built to make this bottled water only makes 1 per year, well, now my 10% profit margin is also a 10% return on asset. But if I borrowed 90 cents to build that factory, now my return on equity, leverage money, is not just 10% profit, 10% return on asset. I got a 100% return on my equity, tenfold. And I'll say, but line queuing theory. Like if you're driving a car, that highway is your sales, and we only see people standing in line in healthcare and government because they're the only 2 industries that are the worst. And you have to wait in line. I could get a hooker and a pizza delivered in 30 minutes, but if I need to get my teeth clean, it'd take a week. I have to wait for a hygienist for a week, but the hooker will be here in 30 minutes. And you want a redhead, brunette, blonde? And I'll say, well, if people are waiting in line, then you need to either hit the gas pedal. Your go-kart's only got 2 pedals. You hit the gas by adding more associates, more hours, more capacity, And if you can't find an associate, more hours, you don't want to do that, you got to hit the brakes and raise the price because you got to give me the freedom to be able to buy. I want to be seen today. And I shouldn't have to wait in line for 2 weeks behind a bunch of people who will only pay $1 for this bottle of water because I could raise that price another dime. Where's my other lid? I could raise my profit, my price 10%. So now my profit margin went from 10% to 20%. I doubled my profit margin by only raising the price 10%. And you don't have the right, everybody that has 5 options finds a way to get in the government and then take away your only one option. You know what I mean? It's like, so you could have done 5 different things. I could only do one and you just took it away from me. That's all government is. Well, I got multiple options and you only have one. So let me take it away because I'm here for you. I want to help you. And I don't want to stand in line and wait a week. I gladly pay $1.10 to get in today. But you don't give me that option. You're booked out 2 weeks in advance. And I'll say, well, you know what? 10% of your customers are on a fee schedule that's below the cost of your goods and services. So it costs you $1 to do a filling, and you're on this insurance plan that only pays you 80%. And then Henry has to wait 2 weeks to see you. So and what do dentists always do? They always do the ostrich thing. They bury their head in the sand. They're like, well, I'm just not going to do anything. I'm not going to raise my fee. I'm not going to drop an insurance plan. I'm not going to let my customer get what he wants. So I'm feeding the alligators. He's going to call somewhere else and never come back. And, it's just, I always say my business strategy is just shit or get off the pot. Figure it out and then make a decision. What do my homies do? They memorize calculus, trig, and geometry, and then they know exactly what's going in their office, and they just don't make a decision. And that's what I call...
I need to get that tattooed. Shit or get off the pot.
Yeah. I mean, shit or get off the pot. So I think these are exciting times. If I was a dentist, and I got out of dental school, and I had $400,000 of student loans, which, by the way, is nothing. My divorce was $3.8 million. My divorce, I always have to figure it out. I think my brain won't let me comprehend how much it costs. But $3,800,000 divided by $87,000 of student loans. My divorce was 43 times more than my student loans. And that $400,000 of your student loans, well, each kid from birth to 17 with no college is $200,000 ahead. My mom and dad had 7 kids. I had 4. My oldest son is exactly as crazy as I am. He already has 4 kids. The next 2 are pretty smart. They only have like 1. And the 4th one's like, dude, that's a lot of overhead. I'm going to pass on the kid thing. So the bottom line is if you have $400,000 student loans, the most important thing is just pick a spouse better so you don't end up in divorce. And I'll never miss an opportunity to remind you this of the divorce literature is that when 2 lawyers get, half the marriages fail. But when any 2 people of the same postgraduate degree get married, it's 10%. So when 2 lawyers, 2 dentists, 2 electrical engineers get married, because, when you marry her, you're so enamored about her, her butt or her whatever the hell. And that wears off in about an hour. Okay. And if you're both dentists, you have something to talk about for 40 years. And then when you come home and say something, she understands the 5,000 words of Latin and Greek that you learned. But 2 postgraduate degrees married, 90% of those marriages work, and that'll save you more money than any of your student loans. So, marry like you wouldn't go marry someone from Shanghai that didn't speak a word of English and wrote Mandarin, spoke Mandarin, spoke Chinese, you don't see anything on the menu. I'll never forget when I lectured the first time in Poland. They always tried to put me up in hotels. I'm like, dude, I've stayed in all the hotels. You're a dentist. I'm a dentist. I want to stay in your house. I want to see what it's like being a dentist in Poland. I love that 1,000 times more, but I'll never forget. I'm an early bird, and I went up and I opened that refrigerator. I almost gasped. I mean, there was nothing in there that's in the refrigerator. I mean, it's all sausages and different things. And I'm just like, God dang, that's a Polish refrigerator. and if you think that's crazy, you ought to do it in Shenzhen. You're like, oh, what is this, like fishing tackle? I mean, is this your fishing bait box? Oh my God, it's all fish, seaweed, I like to keep it real and see what's going on. But at this point, I don't even know what question I'm answering, so you can ask me another question.
So, I mean, you've traveled the world. You have spoken to more successful business people than I can even name. You are, your business does incredible numbers a month. You've written a book. You've lectured around the world. Speaking to people, speaking to young professionals, a lot of the viewers of the podcast are young, aspirational dentists. They want to go into dentist or healthcare, or some of them even want to go into business. What are the kind of key success factors you see in budding young professionals?
Well, number one, it's just, if you do what you love, you never work another day in your life. So if you're an associate dentist and you're just sitting there thinking, I wish I just owned a chain of these dental offices, then why are you taking all these courses and placing implants and Invisalign and all that? You got to commit to what you're interested in. And the reason my homies don't know their accounting is because they're not interested in it. They figured out geometry and trig. They're not dumb. They're the smartest people I know. They just have no interest in it. So if you're not interested, if you do something you hate for money, you're going to end up an addict. If you hate your job, you're going to try to numb yourself. And so if you're really, like a lot of dentists tell me, well, I'm really all I want to do is Invisalign, but I don't know if that's a good idea. Dude, if that's all you want to do, that's what you do. And you'll never work another day in your life. And you'll love taking the Invisalign courses and all things Invisalign. So the deal is, if you hate something, like I had a good friend of mine, Bob Sundberg, that the joke was I'd pull out the top half of the tooth and then I'd send him across the street to him and he'd pull out the bottom half the first year I was open. If my oral surgeon was only out Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So Don Gass would do it Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but Bob Sundberg would have to do it on evenings and weekends. And he told me one day, he said, I'd rather be taken out in the backyard and beat with a stick than do a root canal. I'm like, Bob, there's 4,000 endodontists. You don't ever have to do a root canal again. Because if you hate endo, but you're doing it for the $1,000, it won't be long and you'll be drinking the Listerine, okay? So, so if you're interested in something, you'll naturally gravitate to it and get your 10,000 hours in and master it. But if you hate something, like my two oldest boys, I did not listen to my oldest boy as a father. He would, whenever we talk about a deal, he would always start saying at 10 how he felt sorry for people who had to work inside. And I just blew it off like, okay, well, he doesn't understand that, we're in Arizona. You're not going to work outside. My God, now he's a cell phone tower welding company and he makes more money than a dentist. And and when he's up on that cell phone tower, like he's been on Sutro, San Francisco has this big cell phone tower that you can see from anywhere in San Francisco, from the Golden Gate Bridge on. He's been on that thing for 2 years, doing all these welding jobs, taking down Verizon boxes and putting up new ones and pulling out, redoing it. And he just loves it. He's a rock climber and he's always sending me pictures and he feels really sorry for everybody in San Francisco that's in some cubicle in a building. Well, that's just who he is at birth. I don't want to work outside. I'm an Irish guy. Could you imagine me working construction in Arizona? I'd have a melanoma on my head in an hour. I don't want to do that. But the bottom line is I would just follow what you're interested. But a lot of dentists, they lose why they want to be a dentist in the first place. Like, why did you want to be a dentist in the first place? Why? For me, the technology back then, I go to work with my dad. He owned 9 Sonics. That's where I learned all the business stuff. And he was the love of my life. And it was, do you want to stay home with 5 sisters and play school and Barbies and baking? Or you want to go to work with your dad and you have customers, you have all these hot car hops and all this stuff like that. But we're making hot dogs and hamburgers and onion rings. Then I go to work with my next door neighbor, Kenny, and he had an x-ray machine that was looking through the tooth, and he'd take this x-ray, then you go in the dark room with like the hottest dental assistant you've ever seen in your life and develop the x-ray, and then you're looking through the tooth, and he'd numb it up and do a root canal and get him out of pain and be the hero. And my dad was selling a hamburger for $1, and he was selling a root canal and a crown for $2,000. It was love at first sight. I knew I got accepted to med school, but I didn't go because I know my personality, and I can't work at a hospital and suck up to the head surgeon and the head guy. And I just don't work well. What I liked about it, it was like a Sonic where Kenny owned his own land, his own building, his own employees. It's a little kingdom. There's no democracy at today's dental. I'm the dictator, and I can hire and fire at will. And so I'm going to surround myself with people I like. I'm not going to walk in that office and try to avoid you. I pay you money. I pay you money. I mean, at least get people in the playground that you just like to be with. That's half the stress. And just do things you like. To me, that x-ray machine in that dark room would be your equivalent to a smartphone and Facebook and what's that, Fortnite video game, or, all this stuff like that. It was the technology of the day, and it mesmerized me, and that people would come in pain, and he was the hero, and they'd leave out of pain. And a lot of dentists along their journey forgot why they even wanted to be a dentist. And by the time they get out of school, they're so broken and jaded, they think all these weird thoughts. It's like, the kids, it's simple math. By 5 years old, you're laughing like 300 times a day. And by 50, it's 3 times a day. So where did all those laughs go? So like when dentists write me and said, I took my staff to your seminar, you said shit 14 times, you unprofessional bastard. I just get out a big red magic marker and write, please get help. They're called psychiatrists. Mail it back. I mean, look at a rated R movie. There's naked people. They say the F word. Mine's PG-13. There was no nudity. There was no F word. And even if there was, why am I allowed to say fire truck, but I'm not allowed to say F and a word ending in UCK? I mean, I can say fire truck, but not the other one because it'll trigger you and you'll do a backflip and land on your head and be a quadriplegic. I mean, that's all you. If I should be able to say fire truck and fuck the same, it's a sound. And if one makes you jump out the window and one gives you warm, fuzzy feeling, that's all you. It's not me. And I think it's very abusive that I have to hear all the religious stuff, but I can't say fuck when it's the most commonly used word in the English. When they dissect all your posts and texts and emails, I mean, and it's a verb, an adverb, a pronoun. I mean, it's like, it's the most hardest working word in the world, but I can't say it because I'll trigger the religious community. Well, maybe the religious community should stop triggering me. I mean, I grew up in Catholic school. I think the pedophile situation is over the top insane. And they're worried about me saying a word that starts with F and ends with UCK that's not fire truck. I mean, so everybody needs to take relax. And this cancel culture, if I say a joke and you can't take it, well, you just need to stay in your bubble and shut the door and unplug. It's not me. It's not what I said. It's your reaction. And by the way, I was watching a movie one day and it turned out to be me. And I know this sounds narcissistic, egomaniac, but did you ever see Howard Stern's was the movie Body Parts? Private Parts. And Howard knew that the radio crowd was all the construction workers. They're on a roof, they're doing nails, they're doing sheetrock, they're busting their ass all day outside in dangerous conditions on scaffolds of 40-story buildings, and he'd tell these raunchy jokes, and it would make their day. But then Mrs. Wimpleton, 89 years old, would send in a letter to the station, and the station would freak out, and they'd fire him. And he's like, well, I know all my customers think I'm funny, so he'd just go to the next station. And he just kept getting fired and fired and fired, staying true to himself. He stayed true to himself, and now he's the biggest, highest paying radio act at $500 million a year. And Rush Limbaugh was the other one, and he was from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and that was a political thing, and I know that triggers people, but the bottom line is they stayed true to themselves. And I wasn't born to live your life. I wasn't born to make sure that you give me a good grade. I'm me and you're you. And just, if you don't like what I'm doing, that radio has 2 knobs. Change the station. I mean, YouTube has 1 billion videos. And you're triggered because you watch mine. And but the funniest ones are like, and you've done this on like 7 different issues. Why are you watching 7 issues of a show you hate, you moron? You know what I mean? Watch another show. But I'm being true to myself, like Howard Stern was true to himself, like Rush Limbaugh was true to himself. And I'm talking to you like I would talk to you if we were on a fishing boat, drinking beer, catching redfish in the Gulf of Mexico for a weekend. I mean, I'm not going to be any different. And the reason people can't do that is because they spend their whole life worried about what other people think, which is just mathematically insane. I mean, look at the math. So the first 108 billion people, you don't even know their name. You don't know a damn thing they said. They're never going to know your name. And then there's 8 billion people alive. And the average American, I mean, your average lifetime, maybe you'll have some kind of relationship with 30 to 300 people. So basically 99.9999% of the 116 of the 108 billion humans that died and the 8 billion, you're never going to know anything about 99.9999% of all these humans. Yet you're all worried about what Alyssa thinks. Well, that's you. I mean, I mean, if I mean, it's just crazy. And my dad taught me this lesson. It was when I was about 10 years old. Back then, he had a Lincoln Town Car where when you had a 10-speed bicycle, Schwinn was the big brand. You could park it with a kickstand in his trunk and still shut the hood. And when my Schwinn was broken and took a dill and we pulled up, he just pulled up and rolled down his windows and popped the trunk. And I said, well, Dad, are you going to go in there with me? He goes, well, why did he go in there? And he said, well, what am I going to say to him? So, well, Howard, what the hell did you say to me? He said, look, buddy, if you can't talk to people, I'm going to quit feeding you because you're wasting everyone's time. If you want something, you climb up to the top of the flagpole and you yell it as loud as you want, and maybe someone will hear. But if you're going to sit down here and worry about what everybody thinks, I just want to remind you that no one's ever thought about you ever. All the people in the cemetery, they never thought about you once. And almost everybody in China, Africa, Asia, South America, they've never thought about you once. So since no one's ever thought about you once, why are you worried about what anyone thinks about you? Because I assure you, no one's ever thought about you. So if, just get out there and tell people what you want and what you're thinking. And if you yell it loud enough at enough times, someone will hear you and you might get what you want someday.
Dr. Farron, I can't think of a better place to end. I'm so happy I was able to have you on the show. I'm so happy you're someone that's so eager to speak their mind and speak what they're really and truly thinking and in such a candid way. It's been such a pleasure. I hope to do this again soon. I hope to actually take you up on that and actually go on a fishing trip and maybe we can shoot the shit there. But this has just been incredible.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. This is my parting shot. I've been doing this for 34 years, and I've been picking winners right out of the gate. We had 2 dental schools here, and only maybe one kid every other year will drive all the way over there just to figure today's dental thing out. And I've been watching them. They always rise to the top. To do what you're doing freshman year, you're already a top 1%er. There's no way a baby. How old are you?
23.
I mean, you're not even, you probably just found your own butt cheeks 2 weeks ago. I mean, you couldn't find your ass with 2 hands. You're 23. I've seen this movie 100 times. Guys like you at 23, I know where they're at 43, and the world is their oyster. So congratulations to all your drive. And where it comes from is your intellectual curiosity, and that you have the ambition to put in the work hours to satisfy your curiosity. And you just get curious, so you read books, you talk to people. But I know where your intellectual curiosity and your work ethic, if you're here at 23, I already know where you're going to be at 43. So thank you for that. The world needs more people like you.
Means so much. Thank you.